We are back with more college football coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all the Week 9 action. Interestingly enough, to add this disclaimer in right now, although I intended to watch all these games I'm going to talk about, I couldn't because of major technical difficulties. So as tough as that is, in as much context as that'll likely remove, I'm still going to do the best I can to address everything. Now, coming into this game, both of these teams epitomize the struggle that comes with interconference play in the SEC. Both of these teams, both of them, for weeks on end to open up the season, had been contenders, massive contenders for the CFP. And while they would be endangered with a single loss to both Georgia from Ole Miss and Texas from Oklahoma in the past few weeks or so, they'd be put on the brink, but they might be considered good losses in some cases, especially for Ole Miss. So that's understandable. But if you continue to let them stack up time and time again, it's going to become a problem. And oh man, it will become a brutal problem for the last game that I'm going to address. And it's highly important. But we'll get to that when we do. The biggest thing coming into this one, honestly, was me questioning whether or not the rushing attack for Oklahoma would still be there in this game. Because, yeah, we get the storyline that Mateer, since returning from a hand injury that he may not be fully recovered from, he's been struggling. We understand that. But the fact that I saw those running backs step up last week and get Oklahoma the victory, lead them to a win, I would wonder if that could be consistent or not. Because it frankly hasn't been all season up until that particular game. So hopefully for them, that just wasn't going to be a one-off. And Ole Miss as well, it could have gotten bad for them. You saw Chambliss struggle in a true test of wits in the Georgia game, and it couldn't have gotten even worse for him playing at Oklahoma with that Brent Venables defense. It very well could have. But if that was the case, well, it seemed like he did fine on this first drive as they would get a field goal on the board. Oklahoma eventually tied that up themselves with Isaiah Satania getting a 39-yard catch here and then having Sandel get a 42-yard field goal in. Ole Miss would swiftly respond in just a matter of less than 3 minutes, getting a 75-yard drive going and having Kewan Lacey run for a 28-yard touchdown to give them a 10-3 lead. And then both defenses started to hunker down a bit, force some punts before Oklahoma, in just a minute and 38 seconds, got that right back. Even though the tone was set with a pretty good first down run, it would be Isaiah Satania III on 3rd and 3 to pick up a 76-yard touchdown catch. Now again, I don't know how it happened, but anytime you get a big play like that, it's bound to change momentum in some fashion. At least in the normal context. And while Oklahoma would manage to get a stop, they were so far backed up into their own territory that as soon as they got a penalty here from one of their offensive linemen, they virtually had no space to operate with. And following a negative run with, an Ole Miss defender making a good TFL, you had them get a safety. From there, they had a ground out drive here, but the Rebels would bark back with a field goal of their own after just some missed opportunities on 3 straight downs. Speaking of downs, while John Mateer would manage to pick up a 15-yard gain to Deion Burks for an initial first down on this drive, they would also stall out and have Umanmielen get yet another sack and another tackle for loss in this game to give Ole Miss a great advantage in terms of field position, starting field position, and advantage. They ground their way out yet again, with them getting another touchdown run from Kawan Lacey to give them a 22-10 lead heading into halftime. Now, it seemed like Ole Miss had full control, and that would stay the same for the most part, even with them starting out with a 3-and-out and forcing Ole Miss to turn, or having themselves turn the ball over on downs. They were still smooth sailing up until they got this field goal, Oklahoma did, despite having a great advantage in field position due to just a bad attempt at a punt that ended up losing them yardage. From there, Sandel would get them another field goal, and then Ole Miss would respond before it took just a single play for one of their running backs, again, to burst through the scene, getting a 65-yard rushing touchdown and giving Oklahoma new life in this game. After a 3-and-out, they would respond yet again with a touchdown drive, capped off by the same running back, to give them a 2-point advantage, 1-point advantage. But Ole Miss would not take that without a response. They damn near fucked up. They had a situation where they converted on 4th down, but damn near had their guy fumble it right into the hands of the defense. Despite all that, they managed to shake back, get some huge plays down the field, and eventually Bruckler would get in for an 8-yard touchdown catch. Both defenses were trying to win the battle here down the stretch of this fourth quarter. And while both would get timely stops, it would be Ole Miss to get the final word in this one, getting a field goal on the board. That Ole Miss defense would step up tremendously on a couple of big conversion plays here. You know, it's under the 2-minute warning at this point, and Oklahoma can be dangerous in those situations. But nevertheless, on back-to-back 3rd and 4th downs, incomplete passes to thrown, and Ole Miss would win the game 34-26. Definitely another tough loss to suffer for Oklahoma. And again, it once more puts them in even further danger of losing their potential CFP bid. But at the same time, when you look at what the committee might say about it, one could argue that it's yet another, honestly, that's their best loss of the season. Like, forget the Texas game for a second. Even if they are now ranked again, they were in just a terrible position by the time of that specific game. So we're not going to do that. But that's what they're going to have to consistently take into account. For Ole Miss and their numbers, Chambliss completed just 54.5% of his passes for 315 yards, and he had a touchdown pass in this one. At the very least, he didn't turn the ball over. And in a game that went consistently back and forth like that and got close down the stretch, that's what is going to hold the most value. Now, their rushing attack as a total unit between Lacey and Chambliss picked up 131 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. Chambliss was his usual self there, but I don't know what's been going on. Like, they've been getting a hold on Lacey. Even if he's getting the volume here, the efficiency just hasn't been all there over these past couple of games. But again, as long as you're getting in the end zone, I suppose you'll take it. Watkins would have 4 receptions for 111 yards. And Wallace the third would have 5 receptions for 64 yards, while Lee would have 3 receptions for 60 yards. As for Oklahoma, John Mateer just 54.8% of his passes for 223 yards and a touchdown pass. Xavier Robinson had 9 rushes for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. They finally got that to go, and as a whole, they averaged 4.9 yards per carry on the ground. So, if that was my question, well, yes, it took a couple of big runs to make that happen, don't get me wrong, but you'll certainly take that over what the hell was happening earlier in the season. And I think that's something that they can walk away from this game with. You know, yeah, maybe Mateer isn't fully 100%, and maybe he can get there. But if you don't have to be that reliant on him and you can have your rushing attack impose that kind of dominance on a game over time, that's going to make them even more formidable in the long run. Ole Miss was able to sustain because, again, you have Chambliss in much better health for one, but their run game has just been consistent all season for the most part. So they're going to have a stark advantage in that aspect. Isaiah Satania III would have 6 receptions for 131 yards. Interesting to see that Deion Burks only had 4 receptions for 32 yards. Again, you got to feed the guy with the high hand, of course. I don't know. It feels like Deion Burks has been on a little bit of a slide over the past few games. So they probably want to look to get him going back right. And Kanak would have 3 receptions for 30 yards in this one as well. All right, let me go over to this game right here, because for the next one, we have number 11 BYU at Iowa State. BYU, of course, coming out of that contested matchup with Utah, trying their absolute hardest to retain their undefeated start to the season. One of their most prolific ones since over a decade ago. And meanwhile, Iowa State, man, given the chaos that the Big 12 can have as well, they're just trying to chip away at the contenders in the conference to reassert themselves in that conversation. And it's safe to say, with how this one went, yeah. Now, that there's just no shot that would happen. It started off as perfectly as it could have for Iowa State, to be honest with you. First drive, first play, in just a matter of 9 seconds, Becht got a deep pass over to Iskilson for a 75-yard touchdown. And they had the advantage for a while, even with BYU responding in little time themselves with LJ Martin, punching it in for a 4-yard touchdown run. They not only got another field goal on the board later on, but after a forced 3-and-out, they managed to, at pretty much the end of the first quarter, at least to cap off this drive right here, they ran the hell out of the ball with Carson Hansen. And he managed to get in for a 2-yard rushing touchdown. All of a sudden, at that point, they were up 17-7 against this BYU squad. Like, it was going well for them right now. And then the signs would start to creep in. They would force another punt, but you would have Rocco Becht, even on what was a good drop, starting out with a great Abu Sama the third run. He would get intercepted, and that would lead to a BYU field goal almost immediately. But they got a long ground out drive, a smart drive by them, and Matt Campbell here, to go 7 minutes and 7 seconds on the offensive and take off all that time, wear that defense down with the combination of Sama III and Hansen, because, of course, they're one of the better rushing attacks in the nation. And Hansen would get his second rushing touchdown of the day. Now, if it were to end just like that, man, Iowa State would have been smooth sailing. But they let BYU linger in there for way too long. And Bachmeier himself was able to lead them down the field with a few good passes before Parker Kingston would get a 12-yard touchdown catch to make this a 7-point ball game by the end of the half. From there, it was mostly BYU. Mostly. Now, it wasn't reaching blowout territory just yet, but BYU got a promising drive to start off the third quarter that led to a field goal. And then a forced 3-and-out would allow BYU to drive right back down the field. Yet again, doing a combination of what they do best, getting it out to their slot guys and having Bachmeier run the football up the gut, which he would do for a 9-yard touchdown run. Even with Iowa State having yet another great fucking Carson Hansen run, this time for 65 yards. It almost didn't matter. They damn near worked themselves out of reasonable field goal range and losing the ball even, with Rocco Becht fumbling this one. But Conradi managed to get in a 43-yard field goal and even up the game. They forced a 3-and-out, but all it took was a matter of 3 plays. 3 plays. From what I'm seeing here. Because literally from around 20 seconds left or so in this damn third quarter to early fourth quarter, in terms of like within the first minute and 20 seconds, a combined minute and damn near 45 seconds of just absolute pain for the Iowa State brass. And they felt every second of it. Apparently, their gunner here muffed the punt, and then BYU recovered it, giving them an advantage in field position. Then, in just a matter of 3 plays, you had Parker Kingston get a 27-yard touchdown catch on third down to give BYU the lead back and momentum. And that wasn't all, because in a matter of a couple other plays, you would have Satwala, who honestly had a pretty good game for BYU last week, make yet another big-time play by working the shit out of Rocco Becht and getting himself a pick 6 to give them a 41-27 lead, just like that. And with the offense not even really worried about doing too much there, with Rocco Becht just continuing to stall out and getting picked off again, that would be the final score of the game, 41-27. Wow. It just goes to show, man, that even if you think you have control of a game, man, you do so much work to get that point. Get to that point in a game. And in literally just a matter of a few plays, that can all be erased. It's wild. This was a winnable game for the Cyclones. It truly was. Until it absolutely fucking wasn't. Bachmeier had a combined 356 yards and 3 total touchdowns and 2 passing on 62.9% completion. But honestly, Iowa State made it to where BYU's run game outside of Bachmeier wasn't really all that good. I mean, every other rusher here had a combined 16 total carries for 54 total yards. And as a whole, the unit averaged just 3.7 yards per carry. That's not really up to BYU standard, at least as far as this season goes. And they had them exactly where they wanted them. But by having those crucial turnovers and also allowing the combination of Kingston and Roberts once again to dominate the game, as Parker Kingston had 7 receptions for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Chase Roberts had 8 receptions for 128 yards. You let them do that to you, you stood no chance. That was always going to be a threat here. And they had the advantage for, again, not just when you look at the score, but also in the production. But again, when you lose a turnover battle like that and you swing momentum in that fashion, it's brutal. The most brutal thing you can have happen to your team. Rocco Becht had 311 passing yards and completed 66.7% of his passes, but had a touchdown to 3 interception TD to interception ratio. That's like, damn. Yeah, maybe the last one might have been out of desperation, but my goodness, dude. Not to mention, he touched that motherfucking ground. BYU sacked him 4 times and he had negative 31 rushing yards. Damn. That sack yardage is brutal, bro. Anyways, for their ground game, I mean, Hansen and Sama the third did about what you would expect them to do. Hansen had 16 rushes for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolute masterclass from him, and just a wasted game, as it still didn't lead to a win. Abu Sama the third himself less carries but 9 rushes for 63 yards. Pretty damn efficient to say the least. Brahmer had 75 receiving yards on 5 catches, while Skilton had the lone 75-yard touchdown catch. A guy named Burkle had 5 receptions for 44 yards. And Green had 3 receptions for 32 yards. Okay. All right, moving on to number 4, Alabama at South Carolina. And to think that this matchup last year was so competitive to where it took a fucking missed 2-point conversion from South Carolina to lose that game. And they still almost had a great chance of winning it. They were in it pretty much the entire way. They clawed themselves right back into it. And, hey, literally with a minute left, they were right on the fringe of making it happen. But it just wasn't meant to be. So I figured, with that in mind, this was going to be a tremendously good one. And even with South Carolina coming in this with a below 500 record, that didn't mean shit to me. You saw them last year and you know what they were capable of doing to your squad then. So you could not allow them to come into a clutch time situation with the upper hand. And it's safe to say that for a while, it looked as though that's how it was going to be. South Carolina got the action going with a field goal of their own, and they forced Alabama to go 3 and out. Unfortunately, Lenore Sellers was picked off instantly on the very first play on the ensuing drive, resulting in an 18-yard pick six by one of the Bama defenders. And from there, it was just a slugfest through and through. I mean, you had a string of 3 and outs forced, and then you also had South Carolina, despite some pretty good plays from Rashul Faison, their kicker missed from fucking 47 yards, so that didn't help matters. But they would right their wrongs by forcing Alabama into a fumble themselves, as Ty Simpson's was on the resulting end of a fucking sack fumble, rather. From there, South Carolina would manage to string together a solid enough draw to get themselves within 1, but Alabama, with what they seem to have been doing pretty much at will in terms of the 2-minute drill leading up to the end of the second quarter, they went on another one of these drives, getting Ryan Williams involved. I guess Ty Simpson managed to complete a pass to one of his running backs for a 41-yard gain. I would assume it was a dump-off that turned into a completely broken down play. And before you knew it, they got in a goal-to-go situation. I suppose they tried to use their fucking offensive lineman again, Proctor, in this damn jumbo set to try to catch the defense off guard, and they weren't fooled that fucking time. Before you knew it, they got into a 4th and goal situation following an incomplete pass, and it was there in which Ty Simpson would get a pass over to Josh Cuevas for a 3-yard touchdown to give Alabama the 8-point lead, essentially to take it into halftime. And they had a shot of getting another point or so on the board, if not for the fact that they ran out of time on this last possession in the second quarter, which they would desperately want, because they opened up the third quarter just absolutely sluggish. They managed to turn the ball over on downs somehow, and then as soon as that ended, you get into Nick Harbor, who was on the receiving end of a touchdown that brought them closer into the matchup last year. Well, he fucking did it again, this time from 54 yards out. I don't know who the hell was guarding him on this play, because again, of course, it wasn't Locke. But you can't let that man break wide open down the field like that. You just can't. You know he's that fucking fast. And that promptly resulted in the easy gain for them to bring them within 2. Then from there, they both again decided to get and impede the progress of the other opposing offense here, as you just saw nothing but 3 and out or stalled possession, and Alabama themselves would be the victim of another 3 and out before South Carolina would take that ensuing possession and drive mostly down the field for a field goal. This time, Joyce would make the damn 47-yarder. How the fuck do you make this and then miss the other one earlier in the game? I don't understand it. things got very unfortunate for the Crimson Tide. They would force the stop, but Keon Sabb, an established veteran on the team, managed to muff the damn punt. And who else but Nick Harbor crept in, okay, and got it anyways. Easy field position would lead to an easy touchdown score by Lennar Sellers just running it in from 10 yards out. And from there, hey, you could say that Alabama was definitely on upset alert with around 10 minutes to go in this fourth quarter. And they needed a tremendous amount of effort to come back in this one. Oh, they would get it. First, with some help. They would score a touchdown themselves, smartly taking damn near 8 minutes off the clock and picking up some crucial third downs en route to Jeremy Bernard getting a 4-yard touchdown catch and getting the 2-point conversion as well to tie up the ball game. If that wasn't enough, though, with a chance to take the lead back and potentially end the game in a matter of just 37 seconds, Lennar Sellers and this damn Gamecock squad fumble it away. And from there, you had to figure that Bama was going to find some kind of way to come out of this with a victory. You, as the South Carolina team, you handed it to them on a silver platter the second you turned that ball over right there. And they would promptly do that. But this was mostly on the part of Jeremy Bernard here. Not only did he get this receiving touchdown on the last drive to tie it up eventually, but he also took a fucking rushing play 25 yards to the end zone for a score. And all of a sudden, just like that, in a matter of moments, South Carolina went from having a high percentage of winning this game, or a high percentage of likelihood of winning this game, to very, very minimal. Because now they were backed up with 34 seconds left, and they had no timeouts left, even though first downs will garner a stoppage of clock temporarily. And they could not make do with that. Alabama, despite having a little bit of a struggle there, they would come out with the 29-22 victory against this team and just continue to go on a hot streak following the Florida State loss. It's kind of the outcome you had to have for the remainder of your season, and they are still sticking with it. Even if there were some things that weren't all too promising about this game. Todd Simpson did all right in this one, but 55.8% completion for the man when he had consistently been accurate week in, week out could be something to look into. Although, again, this South Carolina defense is decent, and I guess I can't be really surprised at that result. But we'll see whether or not that is something to caution for Todd Simpson. Unless he still had 253 yards and 2 touchdowns while not throwing a single interception. As for the rushing attack, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. 72 total yards on the ground and 3.1 yards per carry. And then also, you can't take away because it won the damn game. But if you hypothetically took away the Jeremy Bernard run, man, this shit would be even worse. Hill, the running back, led all receivers in terms of yards in the game with 76 yards on 4 catches. Ryan Williams had 7 receptions for 72 yards. And Jeremy Bernard had 5 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. As for South Carolina, Lennar Sellers had 56.2% completion and 222 yards passing with 2 touchdowns total and an interception, along with a lost fumble. In a game that gets as gritty as this does, you have to secure the ball at all times. Any advantage of that kind is just going to result in something truly negative. You can't have it. And you were at home. They knew that coming into this. And yet still, they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. As a team, South Carolina rushed for 111 yards in even 3 yards a carry. It's jeez, oh my goodness. Nick Harbor would have the lone 54-yard catch for a touchdown. So I guess from that perspective, they must have done a decent enough job on Nick Harbor. Rashul Faison had 4 receptions for 47 yards, and a different Jaden Sellers, had 3 receptions for 38 yards. They've got to be related. Just a side note, they have to be. Like there's no way that I see that in the same team and they're not related in some fashion. That's craziness. Okay. Moving on to number 15 Mizzou at number 10 Vandy. Yes, I can't believe this shit either. They were hosting them. They had college game day at the campus for one of the first times. I think the very first time since 2008 they mentioned. Electric fucking atmosphere. But it's fitting for just how much of a drastic change that Vanderbilt has gone through over the past couple years since Diego Pavia and company have been there holding down the fort, bro. It is wild to see. But, against a Mizzou team that is looking themselves to get back on the right track and remain in contention because they have a lot less of a leash in terms of leeway here. They are a team that is coming into this on the fringe, so they've got to ensure that they keep on picking up quality wins, or otherwise their chances are probably slim to none as well in this. This was just going to be a hard-fought matchup between two teams that like to do a lot of the same things. Pavia has proven to be, at times, a sound enough passer to get the job done, but both he and Pribula entering this are not guys that are necessarily going to wow you in terms of lighting up the stat sheet as a passer. But they are going to be damn accurate in distributing the ball around. That's what Pavia has done, and that's what Pribula has done, being one of the top quarterbacks in the nation in terms of completion percentage, entering this one and in other graphics that I've seen for Mizzou games in the weeks past. As long as they actually manage to protect the ball here. Again, because with the way that both of these teams run the football as well, Pribula's a running quarterback. Diego Pavia has elite scrambling ability. They have a good running back room, and Mizzou has Ahmad Hardy. So that was going to be interesting to see how they would attack this as well. And it's safe to say that, both defenses for the better part of this game, they tried their absolute best to one-up each other. The fact of the matter is that we didn't even get our first score in this game up until Mizzou got a field goal with 5 minutes and 15 seconds left in the second quarter. These defenses were going absolutely back and forth with each other the whole time. And there weren't really a lot of long, sustained drives by either team at all. It seems to me like they kept the Ahmad Hardy in check for the most part. But Diego Pavia, he was also in a position where he could not lead anything at all. And honestly, if you're Mizzou, seeing what Vanderbilt has done and seeing how much of a threat they can actually be, crazy to say that, right? You'll live with that result. But you would have had to take way more advantage of some of these possessions than just continue to stagnate on offense. And even with this 3-0 lead, you would eventually have Vanderbilt themselves respond, mostly with a catch by Richardson from deep, absolutely deep. And then they got a few check down pickups here and there prior to them getting stopped and shooting themselves in the foot with dumb penalties. But hey, they were still in good enough field goal range, and their kicker made it to make this an even ball game, 3-3 at the end of the first half. Truly wild stuff. Vanderbilt could have been in deep trouble here. Very deep trouble. if not for the fact that they were playing so good defensively. Diego Pavia would throw a pick to one of the Missouri backers, I believe. But they managed to force them into a turnover on downs in just a matter of a couple minutes of game time. And while neither team could still do anything, is Vandy was forced on a punt thereafter, and yet again, you got a fucking kicker missing what should be a money field goal. Like, how is this that Meyer missed from 29 yards out? That should be easy to make. And it would have made this completely different for Mizzou. Instead, they have to suffer what essentially would have been a 10-point swing here. You missed a damn field goal, and then in just a matter of a single play from 80 yards out, one of the Vanderbilt running backs, and Young, gets an easy race to the rushing touchdown for the score. Like, it's like, yeah, goodness gracious. For that man to leak out like that in just a matter of a play after you give up such an improper special team to miscue, it's the worst thing that could have happened there. Worst thing that could have happened. But at the very least, Mizzou would not get themselves demoralized after this. They saw that, and they're like, okay, we're going to run the hell out of Ahmad Hardy. He would get some of his best runs of the day on this drive alone. And eventually, on 4th and goal, they had a different quarterback step in and get a touchdown pass to James. Now, I would even up the game, but it was going to be tough because you had, by this point, Bo Prabula was out for a while. He had gotten himself injured, unfortunately. It was definitely like a lower leg injury, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's always going to hurt. That is always going to hurt. Safe to say that this backup quarterback tried his absolute hardest, and defense kept them in it. But there's a reason why Prabula was their guy. And yet, even with him doing that fun, other people who were not able to step up on this day would prevent him from truly being able to pull off an upset in this case. As Roberts would actually fumble the football, give Andy the ball back, and from there, they went on a touchdown run to take damn near 5 minutes and around 10 seconds off the clock by themselves, give Mizzou very little run room to work with, and have Pavia rushing for a 1-yard touchdown to give them a 7-point advantage. Mizzou damn near got there. They damn near got there. They drove 74 yards down the field from the 25-yard line. And I shit you not. Like, they go for a Hail Mary, and from what I heard, from what I see here as well, Zollers, the backup quarterback here, actually completed the Hail Mary, but the man was a single yard short. Damn. What a difference that shit can make. You always have to question it, and there, oh, that was everything. Literally the difference between a tie ball game and a straight up Commodores victory at home. And hey, they pulled it off with a 17-10 win. Crazy shit to see. Still to this point. For the numbers, Pavia had 129 passing yards in an interception. Again, not the craziest thing in the world, not even that accurate per se, but bro, it is whatever the team needed at that point in the most crucial moments to get the win, and that's what he did. He added a rushing touchdown on the ground along with 20 yards. As for Young, the running back, he had 4 rushes for 86 yards and a touchdown, mostly aided by that 80-yard run. For receivers, only 4 different ones got the ball. So, talking about not spreading the ball around like that, right? But, hey, you still have Richardson finish with 4 receptions for 62 yards, and Eli Stowers finished with 3 receptions for 42 yards. As for Mizzou here, you had Zollers go and complete 60.9% of his passes for 138 yards and a touchdown. Brad Bula completed 64.3% of his passes and had 68 yards when he was in and healthy. Ahmad Hardy had 20 rushes for 97 yards. Not like some of the other games he had to start out the season when he was legitimately like a top 5 running back in terms of yardage on the season from rushing attack. It was a wild time for him. But he's been limited ever since then. Coleman Jr. would have 7 receptions for 109 yards. James would have 4 receptions for 29. And Manning would have 4 receptions for 24 yards. This man, Longwell from Vanderbilt, that I highlighted in the LSU game, last week, man had 13 tackles and 3 sacks by himself. Hurd also had 3 sacks in this game for the Vanderbilt defense. 3 solo tackles. Mouthful. And moving on to number 3, Texas A&M at number 20, LSU. For all the marbles, damn near a year to the day, alright, in which Marcel Reed, as a freshman, took down LSU despite some struggles at home in College Station, and where Nussmeier had to have played one of the worst games he possibly could have in such a situation. But hey, for LSU, now the ball was in their court, literally. We hear so much about it being called Death Valley, and you already won the battle of the superiority for the naming rights with the game against Clemson earlier in the year. We get that. So you know them fans, and especially not only just having the fans there at LSU in Baton Rouge, but it's a night game in such a hostile environment. We understand how well they have consistently done at home in night games for decades now. It is an absolute fucking mosh pit down there. And you have to play in that as the opposition. Now, Reed was coming off pretty solid game, actually. He was. But again, he's had his struggles this season. And if LSU could make that happen while limiting the weapons around him, which is proven to be difficult to do for a lot of other defenses out there, then they had a shot at this one. Similarly, LSU needed to put their own weapons on display. They could match up with this team. They really could. Both offensively and defensively. But they had to go out there and prove it. They had to assert that from the very jump of the game, or this was not going to go well for them. And for a while, I don't know, you could argue that both teams, for snatches of the game early on, had control and then simultaneously lost it. I mean, LSU didn't do themselves any favors by punting on the very first possession. And yeah, Texas A&M themselves, on a long rushing touchdown from Marcel Reed from 41 yards out, would take the lead in this one at pretty much the start of the first quarter. But LSU would respond with a good drive of their own, pushing down the field consistently before Trey'Dez Green, just boxing the hell out of people, would tie up the game by himself in a 5-yard touchdown catch. Promptly, the Aggies weren't done yet. They would end off the first quarter having the lead because, well, it became a problem for LSU very early to account for Marcel Reed, while also having to watch Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. That is just such a crazy duo to think about. You have Concepcion being seen as a great wide receiver as it is already, and yet Craver in this season, I think, still leads the nation in terms of yards after the catch. It's a fucking scary one to have to consistently guard up on a week-to-week basis. And if you're focused so much on one, you're leaving another open. So they would get the better of Craver on an earlier first down of this particular sequence here. But you literally get Concepcion getting a fucking third down conversion for a 15-yard touchdown catch to give them the 7-point lead. From there, for a while, especially in the second quarter, it was all LSU. Yeah, they ended their first possession giving the ball away, but in no time, their defense started to truly make life a living hell for that team on the other side. Truly. Not only did they force a 3-and-out on this possession, but they also had one of their gunners block the punt and give LSU a free safety. Then, in a matter of moments, they would go 3-and-out again, but their defense, even though they gave up big gains to both Melon Orstrom and also Bethel Roman down the field, once they got into goal-to-go situation, it was none other than A.J. Halsey, one of their star defensive backs, making a play on the ball and giving LSU yet another shot at possession with a chance to take the lead. And they would on this possession. Yeah, it took a few penalties, of course. But Berrien Brown continues to utilize his speed to the best of his ability as he would get down the field for a 31-yard gain. And then they leaned heavily on their rushing attack. I don't know why they tried to get Garrett Nussmeier to run here, but Barry himself on consecutive carries of his own would pick up 13 and then get a 7-yard touchdown run to give LSU the 1-point lead. And still, they continued to pressure the hell out of Marcel Reed when it counted. They got on his ass, and they had Harold Perkins Jr. get yet another interception on him in this sequence to give LSU the ball back again, with a chance to take even more momentum heading into halftime. They would do just that, going up by 4 after a field goal drive, with that being the final score in the first half to end it. And at that point, man, bro, the Tigers were on the ball. They did everything they needed to do. At that point, you just had to keep it going. There was no way you were going to allow this game right here to fall out of your favor. Right? Right? It was all in their cards. They had full control of this thing as they waited to start out the third quarter. I'm sure that Brian Kelly at this point is saying all the right things, making sure that the team is still sticking with the process, because any random thing can happen in college football. Or am I giving Brian Kelly way too much credit here? One way or another, something was clearly lost. Something was lost. Because what proceeded to happen for the rest of the game, even with LSU taking it into halftime, the 4-point lead at home with a loud-ass crowd. By the end of this one, you could hear a fucking pin drop in that stadium. Even without me watching it. Because all of the shit that happened in just a matter of a quarter and some change had to have taken the fucking energy out. It had to. Like, it would have been standard if Texas A&M just got this right here, because they did open up the second half starting out with the ball. And they would promptly go on a touchdown run with Marshall Reed, getting yet another one in himself for the score to tie up the ball game yet again. Give Texas A&M a 3-point advantage. At that point, I get that. No, it wasn't the worst possible scenario in the world. You didn't have a full one-possession lead. You could chalk that up. It's just standard play, just good work from Texas A&M. Nothing truly negative to say about LSU and all there. But then you get into whatever the hell the rest of this shit was. I shit you not. They go 3-and-out punt the ball away, and allow KC Concepcion to get a 79-yard punt return touchdown. And in just a few minutes, you're now far back on the defensive. Oh, but it gets even worse. Their offense couldn't do a lick of anything. And they punted the ball again while their receiving punt returner rather, would manage to get the ball, even though he muffed it. It was still not even that great of a punt. And all he needed was a few extra yardage just like that. They started at midfield and managed to get the easiest damn drive ever, getting Moreau in with a 24-yard touchdown catch. Then LSU, still not being able to find their offense, would just go 3-and-out, a fucking 3-yard pass, an incomplete pass, and then a negative 3-yard pass. Probably just a bad RPO screen call. Which again, if that was the case, well, what the fuck goes into that, Brian Kelly? What the fuck is some of the decision making down the stretch? And why would you call that play in that situation? You also have to look at the team here, though. It's like, man, you were up, and you have to continue to execute. You have to continue to play for a full 60 minutes. You let up your foot off the gas for just a second against this damn Texas A&M team, you fucked up. They go 3-and-out, and yet again, Berkature manages to get them into the end zone for a touchdown this time. Both teams would stalemate, and LSU would force them to punt, but turn the ball over on downs themselves, with Garrett Nussmeier feeling the desperation, feeling all the heat in the world, and still managing to come up relatively short here, giving the Aggies yet another chance at a short field to convert into a touchdown opportunity. And before you knew it, just like that, with Morrow getting in for a rushing touchdown here, like, you're telling me that the Aggies went from being down 14 to 18 at the end of the second half to scoring 5. Jamarian Morrow. Okay. But yeah, you go from that deficit to scoring 5 consecutive unanswered touchdowns and 35 unanswered points in this game. So nobody gives a fuck about Michael Van Buren Jr. stepping in for Garrett Nussmeier after playing like absolute shit and getting into the end zone with a touchdown pass. Nobody cares about that. By the time that happened, this game was already set in stone, as Texas A&M would wipe the fucking floor with the Tigers 49-25 in their own home stadium, nonetheless. Their own home stadium. And they lose what could have been a valiant battle in such dishonorable fashion. It's fucking crazy. It's not even to say that Marcel Reed was completely turnover prone here. Like, the man threw 2 interceptions, only completed 57.1% of his passes, and had 202 passing yards with a pair of touchdown passes. But the rushing attack for Texas A&M, even with all that in mind, still couldn't be stopped. Marcel Reed led the way, of course, with 108 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground by himself. But as a team, they got 6.4 yards a pop, so damn near a first down every couple carries, and 238 yards with 4 total touchdowns there. And if you're LSU, that's got to be some kind of demoralizing. I mean, your front 7 is recognized as one of the better units on your team, and yet, just like that, you give up that kind of work, knowing that you couldn't afford that in this one. Crazy, man. Bethel Roman would have the lone 47-yard catch. Concepcion would have 3 catches for 45 yards and a touchdown. Mario Craver had 4 receptions for 42 yards. Malin Orstrom had 2 receptions for 32 yards. As for LSU, my goodness, it just continues to build up for them. You know, they get themselves in these spots where they want to be highly respected as an opponent. But then you have Nussmeier and this team going through shit like this. 62.9% completion for 168 yards and a touchdown pass. While they with Nussmeier losing 44 yards on the ground by himself, did not really have one to speak of themselves. So that definitely got them behind schedule more often than they needed to be. And it got Nussmeier in a sort of panic even, you could argue. As for receivers, Barron Brown, had 4 receptions for 60 yards. Aaron Anderson, had 5 receptions for 59 yards. And Trudez Green had 6 receptions for 54 yards. A.J. Halsey himself also had 12 tackles, 7 solo tackles, an interception, and a pass deflection. Good all-around game for him, but not for this team. Consistently underperforming in spots like this, despite getting up in the AP poll as high as number 3 in the nation. That still did not end up getting truly affirmed by the way that they played on this game. And it all goes back to one guy in particular. Brian Kelly. There were questions surrounding whether or not he would be on the hot seat following a loss in this game. And let's just put it like this. As soon as I saw that LSU was getting absolutely rocked by that kind of margin, once I saw to that extent that they were getting beaten up like that, I said it right then and right there that they would probably do everything in their power to get rid of Brian Kelly and fire him. Because at this point, how much more are you truly going to take of this shit? It's a smart decision. They have got to get out of this shit, man. They've got to. They've got too good a roster to now be unranked with very little opportunity to return to the CFP. Meanwhile, that very same Texas team is now on a path to do just that. You can question why they're back in the top 25. At the very least, they're making the most of their opportunity. And this is before it got way too late in the season. Now you're a bit more than halfway through at this point. And you are now out of positioning for the CFP. There's no way you stand a chance in a situation like that. There is just no shot. And as for Brian Kelly himself, again, this is a coach who is solid enough. Clearly solid enough with his overall record. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what teams would inquire about him. Or what teams would actually go and pursue him in the nation right now. I couldn't give you that. But what I will say is that for his time with LSU, despite him having all this success with other programs, the man, since he's been there, Jim Kelly, for LSU in 2021, they haven't made a single appearance in a playoff game. Now, yes, it would be tough to consistently repeat when you are an LSU team getting a new head coach. But at the same time, at this point, to start it off, you were only a couple of years, maybe a year or so in terms of the actual date, removed from winning a national championship at LSU. And it feels like they have consistently, obviously with Brian Kelly being here now, but also the fallout with Ed Orgeron and stuff like that, it seems like they've just lost their footing as a unit right now. And they need to be able to pick it back up. It's crazy. The man, this is just wild as hell. The man had a fucking $54 million buyout. The second largest in history for college football coaches. Again, what did LSU potentially seeing this that made him worth such an investment? I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you right now. But it's just like, why invest and wrap up so much money into that? Calling his career as a coach for LSU mid would be incorrect. Like, yes, the man, they'll throw it in your face that he had a 34-14 record, of course. But for you to not make a single CFP appearance one fucking time with this team, at least, is crazy. Like, as long as you get that done just one time, get the proverbial monkey off your back and say that you've now accomplished one of the next steps in terms of being a head coach for a competitive program in a high-stakes conference as it is. You could have held on to that if you got at least that done just one fucking time for everybody. No, you couldn't even make that happen at all. Like, what kind of fucking shit is that? And then not to mention, when you hear about the other stuff going on surrounding him being a head coach, between the attitude he carried himself with towards other players, the, I guess, disconnect they have with him at this point, and also how he's treated some past and present players, it just does not look good for him right now. It doesn't. I don't know to the full extent that it could really hurt, but man, it is brutal. Also, earlier today, I guess they're trying to clean house as well because they fired Joe Sloan, the offensive coordinator for the team as well. Like, anybody, and I like that. I do like that quality of it. Anybody that has any kind of connection with Brian Kelly in any way needs to go. You have to get that thought erased out of your mind because it is done. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.